Right, we move on to our discussion, and numbers are out, they keep going out, names are falling. Let's find out exactly what is going on from everywhere, especially at Bomas. I've got two gentlemen with me. Philip, thank you for coming back. Philip Kisaka is an advocate of the High Court. And tonight, Ogato Orina joins us. He's a political strategist and analyst. Welcome.
Thank you so much.
Why don't we start with a new perspective? Ogato, tell us, what have you seen so far?
Well, thank you so much, Louis, and it's good to see you after quite some time. And it's good to be at Look Up TV tonight. The past 24 hours has been quite confusing to Kenyans. Kenyans have been treated to some sort of theater of the absurd, because data is flowing right, left, center, and it is so confusing, it is unverified. Everyone is reporting, everyone is posting stuff, and Kenyans, as we speak, are just confused and at worst stressed, so to speak. Because until now, much as there were low voter turnout, those of us that voted have been expecting results. As at now, there ought to be an indication of where things are moving to. But then the numbers keep on flip-flopping, going up and down. New numbers replacing previous ones. Everyone declaring and saying lots of stuff. So there is a lot of confusion. I hope it's going to clear the soonest time possible.
Philip, we started off so well yesterday. What happened? When they all started doing all this?
Thank you very much for having me back on the show. But I'd want to maybe differ with Dr. here a bit and say most of this confusion is probably being caused by social media and everyone turning into a reporter at the comfort of their own devices. But I've seen the Media Council sort of try and clarify, and I've also seen different TV stations clarify that the results they are posting are according to how they have approached computation of this Form 34A results that have been posted on the portal. So each station is deciding which region to start with, and I think that is probably why we are seeing these varied results depending on which TV station you're watching. Ultimately, also the chair has indicated, and as per law, he has 7 days within which he is to deliver the results. So I think we should at least continue maintaining the peace and calm, as we have done yesterday and today, and await what the chair will have for us.
Is it not clear who's the authority? Is it not clear who's supposed to give us these numbers?
Yeah, it is very clear that the IBC should be giving us the numbers. But then for some reason, I think due to the court ruling, the numbers have to be posted on the public portal for IBC. And then remember, the court also ruled that Form 34A at the polling station, the media has to have a copy of the results. So each of the media houses has allowed their reporters to sort of independently feed their independent tallying center with information, and that is why we are seeing all the discrepancies that we're seeing, that Media House A sent out their reporters to all the polling stations, and now the results are trickling in at different rates. We expected that out of the preparation that we saw on the media, that this election was to be covered fully, and it ought to have been, the results ought to have trickled in a little faster. But then most of the media houses, as we speak, they are at 10%. I remember the IBC chair in his latest presser indicated that most of the media houses' independent tallying was lagging behind what is expected. So that is why we have that confusion. When you look at the public portal, the IBC has posted their numbers, but then the media houses are quite lagging.
Where did you vote?
I voted, and then I have a story behind this because...
No, but where? Which is the location?
Where I voted?
What you saw, where you were.
Oh, I voted. Yeah. I voted in Nyamira County.
What was your experience
and
there?
Then I had to drive all the way back to Nairobi. And the voter turnout wasn't, the numbers were not such pleasing. Perhaps it is because it was early in the morning, because I voted around 7 o'clock, because I had to travel back to Nairobi. But then as I was driving out, people were moving in, and they were peaceful and orderly. So I expected that the process ought to have been fast-tracked.
Okay.
Yes.
We did your center. We were in Kakamega with you. What did you hear after you left? Did it stay online, or did something go sideways?
I mean, of course, the turnout was not as expected, but did stay online. People were peaceful. The process was generally peaceful, and everyone was pleased with everything that transpired.
Yeah. So what should we be dealing with today? What would you want us to focus on now that the anxiety is still there? What is missing?
We got to have one command center where the information is flowing from. We got to have one portal where all the news sources, say the media establishments, where they are picking their numbers from, so that the numbers are not confusing, such that media A has to have the same numbers as media B or Z or D. So if we can manage the flow of information that has been verified from IBC, the better. I think at this point in time, because people are suffering from infobesity, so to speak, there is a lot of information that is confusing. How I wish that we had one information source and it is standard across the media sources.
What do you think, Philip?
Just to add on that, I feel like just the way the presidential debates were done, and all these media houses came together and they had one platform, one voice in terms of approaching how the debates would work, transmission of the debates, moderators within the debates. I feel like what Dr. is saying is true. Again, as I mentioned, I've seen the Media Council issue a presser saying that they're trying to liaise with all these media houses to find out a common ground in terms of computation of these results. Because I know it's a matter of internal processes within the media houses. The results have been posted on the portal. Unfortunately, this time it is not text, it is an image, which makes it a bit tedious for you to download one Form 34A, then for you to compute the results for each candidate, then for you to feed it back into your live feed. So I feel like probably if they had one media command center, then that would work. But on the end and the part of IEBC, I feel like they've done their part, they've held the end of their bargain. The platform has not collapsed, it is still up. There's over 90% submission of Form 34As, so I wouldn't want to demonize them a lot on that.
So Chebukati still has a last call, and that's how it should be. What did we miss in terms of planning? Because now these are just gaps, planning gaps. Because we don't want to say, okay, it's really starting to break down, but is this things that they could have stopped in the planning process?
Well, the planning was not adequate, in my view, because remember we had a tussle whether we're going to rely on the electronic identification or we were going to do a manual register, and then who was going to inspect the ballots as they were being printed. Remember, we have cancellation of the polling in some of the centers owing to a mix-up in, I don't know, the images against the names on the ballots and other errors that ought to have been stopped if we had adequate planning. We ought to have involved all these multi-agencies that are involved. The media ought to have been well briefed. We ought to have had adequate civic education, which was quite missing, because the voters ought to have been told that, yes, this time around we have so many candidates on one ballot, for example, and this is how you're going to identify them. These are the colors that are going to be matching the ballot boxes, And on average, this is how much you would spend in casting your ballot. But then we have seen the KIMS kits failing, and then some of the biometrics not being captured on the KIMS kits, and then going back to the manual register that IBC was not so keen on previously. So yes, there was planning, but then the planning was not quite adequate. I'm surprised that the media houses didn't plan much as well. Because if you can see how the numbers are appearing, one of the media houses until now, perhaps not 1 million votes have been counted or have been tallied in their own independent tallying. Yet we have others that are on to 1 point something, others are up to 3 million. Then that points to some sort of not preparing adequately.
I'd hope by now we'll just talk about the names that are falling and the new names that are coming in and the surprises that are coming in, not to mention somebody's shooting people also on the other side. But still, we're not at a place where we're talking DEFCON levels. You talked about civic education. Would this have helped?
As of now, I think civil education, where it would really stop, would be at the point of the voter casting the vote. We've seen a really low voter turnout around the country. I'm not too sure. I think Nairobi is one of the counties with the least voter turnout, which would beg the question that where all these crowds that the politicians were pulling in. So I think civic education, much as it would have a ripple effect into the process after, I feel like it would have much better impact at the level of the voter before actually casting the vote and during casting of the vote. I'd also again want to commend IBC. I know at the polling station I was in, the PO and the clerks who are moving around kept on insisting that if you don't know how to vote, we'll show you how to vote. This is the procedure when you get in there. So I don't know if that was an isolated polling station, but at least from what I saw there, there was a bit of improvement from previous elections.
How did they take the story? How did they accept it that now they cannot vote for their governor?
I mean, they accepted, as I had mentioned yesterday. Most of them, again, knew about this on that morning when they had lined up to vote, and they're very surprised at what's going on. Why are we not voting for the governor? And you'd have the 1 or 2, 3 people who had smartphones tell them, okay, look, there was an issue. There was a presser yesterday by Chebukati saying that in Mombasa and Kakamega and a few other constituencies, we will not be voting this time round because of 1, 2, 3 errors. They didn't take it well because, of course, they had left all their duties for the day to exercise their civic right. And most of them were hesitant to confirm that they'd be back to vote once more once that voting date is gazetted.
And what's the effect of this? When something like that happens and people don't get to vote on the day and they're told, we will come back to you, what is the effect of that on the voter?
That has quite a magnanimous effect on the voter because, number one, the voter is going to be frustrated. And that is going to open up the voter apathy gap. If you are prepared to go and cast your ballot, this is something that you've been planning for. Remember, in Kenya, we do politicking all round, all the 5-year term round. So to some extent, people were outstretched. Remember, the campaign started in 2017. We've been hearing people presenting themselves for various positions, and now people were, let's say, beyond the breaking point. People wanted to come and vote. Once you tell them that we are going to postpone this, in a way, you send them away, you might not invite them back. You might not have to convince them to come back again. So I want to believe that there is going to be sufficient time for those areas that did not vote for their gubernatorial candidates for some campaigning to be done, because
Again.
Yes, because that is how then you can get people, you can call people out to come and vote. Otherwise, people would be saying that this is done and dusted, and we wouldn't want to come back to it again. As we speak, people are waiting for the declaration of the results. People want to go back to their works. Our children are going back to school on Monday. Parents have started thinking of how to raise funds or get the school fees, getting fare to where they're going to school, and other things so that life can move on, because we cannot be politicking for forever. So
we're anxious to start politicking for the next election.
Yes.
They're causing us a delay.
Yeah, that is it.
You mentioned Nairobi, and as deserted as it is, you're saying they did not vote as much as they were supposed to. How did that happen?
I mean, again...
they have all the information, they have access, then they wouldn't vote.
Yeah, probably just to speculate, you are getting a scenario where there's issues of one, maybe mobilization, as I kept on talking about. And again, this should not be an issue in Nairobi because the transport network is a bit much more advanced than in the villages and what have you. But again, I think it all goes down again back to civic education, because you find that most voters in most residents of Nairobi do not vote in Nairobi. Once again, I mean, myself included, I think Dr. here included, would most definitely be driving out of the capital to go vote in our own respective home villages. And you find that the people who are now supposed to vote in Nairobi maybe have not yet been reached, again with that final pitch of, okay, let's get out, let's vote in numbers because of this. And secondly, I think that there is that fear of queuing for a very long time. You know that in previous elections, people have been queuing, and you're in the queue for like 4 or 5 hours.
It's the only way to vote.
Yeah, but in the queue for 4
How
or 5 hours.
much will you vote? How can they not want to queue? And when you tell me about their mobilization is low and the exposure is low, what more? All the shouting has been done in the city.
I mean, queuing is okay, but as I know, very many Kenyans are impatient. I think that is where we also got to have a glimpse of Githeri Man, if you remember. This guy had come set to vote, and he had come with his packed lunch because he expected to be in the queue for long. And that notion of, am I going to waste my whole day on a queue to elect people who will not really cater for my day-to-day needs? Or am I going to go out there and find something to do, then come back later when the queue is much shorter? And with that thinking is that now everyone does not come in the morning and everyone wants to come later when the queue is shorter. But as we know, you have just postponed the problem to the afternoon
and
rather
they're all
than the
gone
morning.
media in the afternoon. I'll tell you why. Why is Nairobi not voting?
Not Nairobi only, but then across the country. My take would be that Kenyans are a peculiar lot. You'll get the Kenyans so excited to go and join the crowds when the politicians are campaigning.
They like the rallies.
Yeah, the rallies, they are dancing, jumping, and having fun. They can as well line up to get the handouts when that time comes.
They don't complain about that.
They don't complain about that. They can withstand all the conditions that you can imagine so that they can get the handouts. But then when it comes to real voting, I think maybe because of inadequate civic education, because we don't take our voting seriously, because we don't know that we have a civic duty to vote, and it's only through the vote that you can choose a leader and turn around your future and the future of your children and your children's children. We take the exercise of voting quite casually. I had a chat with some of my relatives back at home. Are you going to vote? They are telling me no. Why? They are telling me they don't know whom they are going to vote for. I was quite frustrated as I was teaching my students. I teach at a local university. When I'm asking my students whether they are going to vote, they are telling me no. Why? Because they don't want. I ask them whether they know how important it is for them to vote. They are telling me, we know so much. Previously, people have cast their ballots and they have not made sense. So there is a sense of giving up. There is a sense of frustration. Previously, there was rising and rising cost of living. People were frustrated. Fuel went up. Cooking oil went up. Basic commodities like soap and sugar.
But it hasn't pained them enough to understand that the only way to change this is we're going to vote.
Now that is the civic education that we need to do. We don't take the exercise of voting seriously.
And then we complain for the next 5 years.
We complain for the next 5 years. Few of us will complain. Those of us that are going to vote will just vote and go back. We wouldn't even want to hold into account the people that we have put into the office. I go back to Kisii, I vote, I come back to Nairobi, at peace with myself. I wouldn't want to go back home to go and find out where is this governor that I voted in, where is their office, what are they supposed to do, have they done it? We don't quite oversight the leaders. So we need to do so much in taking this exercise seriously and getting to train and teach everybody on how important it is to vote and to choose a leader and to follow them up and ensure that they do what they're supposed to be doing.
How do we get people to stop voting by remote control and actually go to the lines?
I mean, it all starts with the IBC. And in terms of guaranteeing integrity, transparency, fairness, accountability within the whole voting process. And this means from casting of the ballot to counting of the votes to transmission of results to final announcements of from the presidential results all the way down to the MCA results. And this will make people turn up and actually believe that my vote counts. And my vote counts because this process has been set up by the body mandated to do so. It's robust, it is airtight, and not at any one point will I feel that my vote is lost or my vote will be stolen or anything of that sort.
We're talking about get up and go and vote. And we're saying if you do not vote, then you don't have a voice because you cannot come back and come on TV or go to your village and start saying, we do not want this leader. Why is this not understood?
Partly. Previously, people, like I said, have lost their hope. People know that our leaders in Kenya especially are selected in a boardroom. A cabal of a few individuals would want to go and sit somewhere. They cast some lots and then they say, so-and-so is going to be the president, so-and-so is going to be their deputy, so-and-so is going to be the cabinet secretary. And since independence, we have been treated to such sort of drama where people have now come to believe that our votes do not count. If our votes do not count, then why should we take this exercise seriously? Because we know there are people somewhere who are going to sit and choose to decide our future and our destiny anyway. So that is why most people do not take this. Unless, like Kisaka here is saying, that we need to revive our hope in our systems. We have to have our systems working so that we can have faith in them and get to know that once Louis casts a ballot somewhere, Orina here does, Kisaka does, those are 3 ballots and they mean a lot and they are going to decide the next leader. But then once we cast our ballots and then we know there is some ping pong kind of game that is subject to them and another leader is selected somewhere else, then until that time when we know that we have structures and we have faith in our structures, we have an independent judiciary, a functional judiciary that is going to be an arbiter of parties that are warring, that we know the referee is going to be IBC, they are going to be independent, they are going to say it like it is in a very transparent way. Until that time, then the exercise of voting would be a joke to most of the Kenyans.
Well, we anticipated by this time we'll be seeing names that have made it, names that are falling, and that is why we went to vote. But with this discussion, and we're talking about process and procedure, let's get a sample of the results that have come in so far. Maybe these are names you recognize. We'll talk about them when we come back.
Nataka kushukuru wale competitors wangu wote wenye tumekuwa nao, including yule competitor mwenye yuko mbele as far as matokeo iko. Sababu mimi according to form 34 mimi ndiye number 2. The leader mwenye yuko mbele ni Senator Moses Masika Wetangula. Mimi namshukuru kupambana kwenye amefanya, na pia mimi najishukuru mimi personally with my family. They have stood with me at this hard journey.
Right, we were saying by this time, we were expected to see names, numbers, so that we can start saying, like you were saying, that my vote counted. Are we getting that indication so far?
That indication is not there yet, because like we said earlier, that we have seen data moving back and forth. That candidate A might have won. After 2 hours, another data comes, and then countering that. So we are not quite clear on who the real winners are as at now. Okay, a few of the numbers have trickled in. We've seen, like in Nairobi, we've seen who is the senator, who is the women representative, and other places. But then still, they don't reflect what was projected by the voters. You see, there is an exit poll. Once you cast your ballot, you say, well, this is how I may have projected. This is how I may have voted. And then we got some expectation. We are yet to see those numbers making sense.
The expectation, Philip, is it being met?
I mean, of course, as human beings, you're quite impatient. But as the chair has indicated that so far, no Form 34B has been received yet at the National Tallying Center. And so they cannot start giving us the results as they come in. And I think, again, this is also, the confusion also caused by media houses, as I indicated, where everyone is tallying information or tallying 34As from different parts of the country. Depending on maybe alphabetical order, or depending on how they've received this information, or depending on how they've downloaded this from the portal. So I feel like maybe we give it a bit of more time. I'm very optimistic this time round, having voted in the previous election, to just maybe see how this pans out.
Yet some have already conceded. How do they arrive at that?
I think the results that have almost been concluded, the results that are declared at the polling station and it ends there. Let's say, for example, the result of the member of the county assembly, the senators, the women representatives, the governors, and the members of the National Assembly. Those, most of them have been declared. Because once Form 34A is filled at the polling station, then the tallied at the constituency headquarters or the sub-county headquarters, and then we have Form 34B, which is used to declare whether a candidate is, for example, a member of parliament elect or senator-elect candidate. Before then, they are subjected to the national returning officer. But then what our focus is, or most of the voters, the focus is more on the presidential result at the expense of then the MCA or the senator. So it is possible that the members of parliament or the Senate and these other leaders may have considered, having been informed by the presiding officers at a polling station. The tallying happens quite quick. For example, let's say in Nyamira County, in Gachuba Ward, where I'm domiciled, you look at the polling stations, and once you get the number of the votes cast, let's say for the member of the county assembly, from those, then they are enough to declare someone a winner. So that is how people are conceding. But then I think the focus is more on the presidential result, which is where
it's going to be, because this hype was built so much,
yes.
And there was some individual, the tension levels that were built, which I don't think were really necessary, and that is why the impatience is coming in, because people want to get it over and done with, and let's go to the next step.
Yeah, just to bring up, just to bring up another, maybe thing is that we are talking about Form 34A. But you also have Form 35A, 36A.
What is it with your forms, man? You started these forms yesterday. We're going to go up to 40 at this rate.
So Form 34A is basically just for the president. We have 35A, 36, 37, 38A.
Here we go.
Which ranges from the MCA to the members of the National Assembly to the governor. So
I told you yesterday we are voting for too many people. Tell me what you think about this country having all these people being voted for. We even lose track.
Honestly, Louis, when I looked at the ballot papers, for once I thought it was bulky. You see, there is different sizes of those ballot papers with several images and several names and several party symbols, and those that are independent, several of their identification symbols. Now you have you have 6 ballot papers. I mean, it is chaotic. I'm exposed, I'm learning.
And yet you find it tiring.
Yet I got it tiring. You got to flip through and ensure that you read all the names, and then you find your candidate, you mark, and folding was hectic. I believe the ballot boxes were filling after, let's say, 20, 30 minutes, because there was no particular order of folding these long ballot papers. Some people would fold it twice, others 4 times. So how I wish that
fold it as much as you want.
Yes,
it's a secret.
we split the polling. Let's say if we want to look at the county, let's say the governor, and then the county women representative, and then the senator, and perhaps the MCA in one day, and then we have the president and the National Assembly on another day, then that would make a lot more sense. But then doing the exercise in one day, and then you keep people waiting for another 7 days, there is a disconnect. An exercise that is concluded in one day, and then you are outstretching people's expectations for another 7 days, I think there is going to be a burnout of the expectations. I think now people are dealing with their how to manage their sugars, because they are quite outstretched. I interacted with a number of people in the morning, and then they told me that they were frustrated. Some of them had already decided to switch off their television sets because the numbers were not moving, no new information was coming, there is no progression. So people had to switch off and then go and take a leave before they come back. So people are quite frustrated, owing to the technicality that we encounter when we are, or the technical nature of our voting system.
Let's see how that has gone. Let's see what's happening in Bungoma. This is a critical point also. And let's hear from very experienced politicians, Ken Lusaka and Moses Wetangula. They have something to say about the process.
Kuna mtu yeyote ambaye anataka kufanya ukora au ujanja, vile tunasikia ati kuna watu ambao hapa wanajiita baba ya fujo. Kama yeye ni baba ya fujo, tutamreduce akuwe babu ya fujo. Kwa sababu hatuwezi kukubali mtu kuchezea kaunti yetu. Wananchi wameamua, wananchi wamepiga kura. The mood in the county is so good. People are relieved. They have downloaded and offloaded the nuisance that was around our politics, and are waiting for the official announcement that now we have a new governor, we have a new MP in Kandui, we have a new MP in Tongaren, and I want to salute our former Secretary General, David Eseli of Tongaren. He has gone public and conceded defeat. And the decent thing people like Omunyi should do is not to engage in cheap and unhelpful guerrilla behavior, but to concede defeat and go home with dignity. Otherwise, he will disgrace himself even more. And the more he disgraces himself, the more he injures his future in the politics of this county and anywhere else. Pia, we know in Webuye East, our candidate has fared very well. We have no issues there. And many other places where elections are going on.
Kwa kutupigia kura kwa njia ya amani, na ukiuliza mtu yeyote huku nje wanajua mimi ndiye governor. Tumengoja tu kutangazwa, tumeshinda kila constituency. Na vile mheshimiwa senator amesema, kuna wale bado wanaishi kwa enzi za zamani, hata wanafikiria wataleta ballot boxes. Kura ilimaliziwa kwa polling station. Hapo wakati ile ilitangazwa, ilikuwa inatangazwa na watu wamejua. So ukijaribu kuleta ndio kura, ukijaribu kuleta vitu zingine they are not in law. What was announced at the polling station na agents wetu walikuwa wanapiga picha hiyo form. So we have the results. Ile tunangoja tu ni kwenda county returning officer atangaze wale ambao wameshinda. Kwa hivyo sisi ni kusema asante kwa wananchi wa Bungoma kwa kujibeba kwa njia ya heshima na kwa kutupatia nafasi tena kuja kuwafanyia kazi.
Mimi kile ambacho nataka kuwasihi ni kwamba matokeo tunayajua. Na mimi ndio mbunge mteule wa Kandui. Aambie kila mtu kule nje. Kile tunangojea hapa ni kupewa cheti hapa. Wale ambao wanapanga kule nje kuja kuleta vurugu hapa ili tuharibu zoezi ambalo liko hapa, tumewajua na tumewangojea na tutawapata.
Dr. and Philip, we are back, and we talked about expectations that have been raised so high, which are not realistic, because we are looking at what, 6 positions to vote for, and even now in your exposure and what you've seen during this day, there are names which have really been out there and people are wondering what has happened to them. For you, what has been a notable change so far in the results that have come in? Let me start with you, Philip.
The most notable one, I think, would be in Nairobi, Langata constituency, where Nixon Korir was going up against the likes of Jalango and the rest of the team. I know it was a very long ballot paper, attracting over 12 candidates. And again, with a lot of misinformation that hadn't been verified, we thought Nixon Korir was still winning. But I think earlier today or late last evening, then we actually got the true picture that Jalango had actually won the seat. So I think in Nairobi, that would be one of the most notable ones. Again, in the gubernatorial race, Sakaja's was, I think, maybe inevitable, in my opinion. Having been a senator before and appealed to the people of Nairobi, I think that was quite an easy win for him. In Bungoma, the return of Ken Lusaka, the current Speaker of the Senate, that has also been a very big, not a very big surprise for me because of his strategic positioning and with the party that he actually used.
What about you, Dr. Any names you've noticed that they should have been or they should not have been there?
Not names, but then I rather would want to look at the 2 main formations. When you look at Kenya Kwanza and Azimio la Umoja One Kenya, in the case of Nairobi, we have a gubernatorial candidate who is from one formation, and then we have majority of the members of the county assembly from another formation, which is going to make governance quite hectic. And I can foresee a situation where we're going to have a number of handshakes because governing is going to be quite hectic because you need these numbers, you need substantive numbers for you to pass a motion, for you to transact business in the county assembly of the nature of Nairobi, for example. Because when I was looking across...
Would you put your faith in the assembly?
Pardon?
In the MCAs, would you put your faith there? Would you say that is a good oversight for the governor?
Given the previous experiences, that the county assemblies have been in a point of collision, so to speak, with the governors. So then you can project that there is going to be quite a push and pull in the Nairobi County Assembly. That is why then there is going to be governing the county and making decisions would be hectic for the governor. That is why you need to go for a handshake. If you can pick a few independent candidates that have been elected, and then you make peace with those from the other political formation so that you can work together. That is what I'm foreseeing. When you look at the presidential, the numbers from what has been projected, once again, what we are seeing on different media stations, the numbers are too close to call. That then presents a situation where we may be headed for a handshake. We may be headed for leaders sitting together saying, well, I have given you these numbers in the Senate or in the National Assembly, I've given you these other numbers, then let's work together. And then it gets into what is in it for me. So I'm looking at the future of the county assemblies and the National Assembly, both the Senate or rather the Parliament, both the Senate and the National Assembly, that leaders would be forced to work together for them to transact business and work for the Kenyans that have voted for them.
Is that growth, politically, democratically? Is that growth? Compromise all the way. Now they have to compromise.
No,
what is the point in doing all these campaigns and you have to come back and sit on the table? Because as Dr. said, you can't work.
No, I think there has, of course, to be an element of compromise. But then this would again bring up the issue of, will we have a formidable opposition? Because as we know, much as the concept of an opposition is not in law, and I think this is what the proponents of the BBI wanted to pass. I feel like, and I think that having a strong opposition that would always check the government, so to speak, would also be a good thing to have, rather than just saying we'll have to compromise for the next 5 years because we are in this thing for 5 years. So you're a governor from Azimio, I'm an MCA from Kenya Kwanza. I'll always just do what the Kenya Kwanza leadership is telling me to do within the county assembly. I mean, there needs to be a balance between collaboration, cooperation, and also just ensuring that much as you may be in the opposition, either as an elected leader or not, that you're using that position to actually just offer that check and balance.
Is this easily defined in this country, opposition? Because we're what, democratic? And everybody comes to liberate us every 5 years. Where are we being liberated from? By the same doctrine in the politics we do. What is this new liberation we're always looking for?
Louis, the system of governance or the system of government that we have in Kenya is not so clear. It's a mongrel sort of, because we don't have a very clear opposition with very clear defined functional office. Recently, we have had members that are serving in the government turning to oppose the same government. We have had the opposition that we have known for the longest time having got into a handshake with the government. And so there is no clear-cut opposition. I don't know, Bwana Wakili, whether there is a clear constitutional provision for that. But then even if it were, it has not been practiced in Kenya. And most of the leaders, once they get into office, they get personal. They become so selfish and they are thinking about themselves. That is how I think the opposition is watered down, and we don't have a very strong oversight checking on the excesses of the performance of the government.
What do you think, Philip?
Yeah, I think, first of all, there's no provision for the opposition as in terms of the leader of opposition and all that. It's just a term that you come up with for the first runners-up in any election. And for the longest time, I think most of us have always known the Azimio flag bearer as a leader of opposition. Yeah, so his name was synonymous to opposition. Maybe that may change this time round, maybe not. Only time will tell. But I think having an opposition is very necessary, because then the government of the day gets to exercise its power, knowing that if we do any excess, much as there are other three arms of the government that recourse can be gotten from, there is still this other stakeholder, the opposition, that would keep on reminding us, yo, people, you're not supposed to do this, that would keep on coming up with pressures. I remember there was even this time that people used to joke about tear gas Monday, that they knew that previously Raila would always have a press on Monday, and it would end up in tear gas and fracas and all that. So an opposition is meant to, quote unquote, keep things interesting, spicy for the government.
But it's not clearly defined. We don't even know what they stand for. Who are they? Is there room for opposition in this country anymore? Or it just means if you're not in government, then you're the opposition?
I think because the system of our government has been a very adverse one, where the winner takes it all. So once the winner takes it all, then the closest challenger has to automatically assume the opposition. So that...
Without any clear definition.
Without any clear
definition.
definition.
All you do is if he says A, you shout B.
Yes.
And you get paid for that and you have a position.
And the opposition, the nature of the opposition then that we have is not to oversight, but then it is to...
snap at your heels.
To present a challenge. You give the government of the day a lot of problems until they cannot perform. Because oversight means you got to be realistic. You got to have your own cabinet, the shadow cabinet, as it were, that would want to read reports from different departments of the government and punch holes onto them, and then question the expenditure and tell people this is what ought to have done. If we were in government, then this is the perspective that we ought to have. So you need to add value to the running of the government, not a near sort of fist fight, because you are aggrieved. Because the kind of relationship that the opposition has towards the government of the day is a love-hate kind of relationship. You don't see eye to eye. You are never invited into the negotiation table. You're not consulted. So you sit at a corner somewhere. You would want to start throwing stones onto the government and make governing impossible.
Maybe just to probably add on that, when you talk about opposition, of course, right now as we are discussing this, there are like two main coalition political parties, Azimio and Kenya Kwanza, and of course having incorporated other smaller parties. We are only discussing about the leader of opposition. But remember that the government of the day is always assumed to have been formed by the person who wins the presidential election. So in and out with the interaction of the government, there'll always be opposition within government and outside government. So you'll find people elected as an MCA, as an MP, as a governor, but not by a party that has taken the presidency. So I feel like in terms of oversight, it would be at two levels: from within as an elected member, through a party that has not carried the day in terms of presidency, and secondly as an outsider who either lost now the presidency or part of that technical team that lost the presidency. So when discussing about opposition, let us also just try think about it in those two specific
How can
levels.
we get it to be better defined? It will even help the voter, it will even help the people they're administering to. How can we better define this term and say, okay, this is clearly the opposition?
I mean, you're trying to corner me to bring back the conversation on the
BBI.
BBI.
I don't want to do that. I'm just trying to understand what is so difficult in this country that we cannot define what the opposition should be and what they should do, and they have a role to play. Like we're saying, it's oversight. So I'm trying to understand Why is it so difficult to communicate this?
So the role, first of all, the role we're talking about is not a constitutional role. It is just saying that, look, you also have a majority, you have a substantial following, not a majority. And you also have these
numbers.
Yes, you have numbers, and you at least have a duty of care maybe to these people. And it is not an absolute mandate in the Constitution that now, look, you lost, but you have to vehemently and vigorously defend these people. And I feel like even when the handshake came in, very many people felt betrayed, because they were like, okay, Baba has always been in the opposition, he's always pushed for this, and now he's in government. People are complaining, and people felt very entitled to Baba being in the opposition and remaining there. So I feel defining it would necessitate for legislation on the same, probably.
But they are provided for by law.
No. The leader of opposition is not provided for by law. And as I've said, you look at things like a leader of minority who's an elected member of parliament, maybe in the parliament or in the Senate, and what have you. But at the topmost level, we're not saying that there's any office like the leader of opposition.
That is a clarity I need to
maybe to add on to that, like I said, our system of governance is not clear. We are not quite clear whether we are in the presidential or we are in the parliamentary. Because in a parliamentary, therefore, system, the parliament and the Senate, or the parliament, that is the Senate and the National Assembly, should oversight the executive, whether you belong to the party that is ruling or not. By virtue that you've been elected into parliament, you legislate, then you are supposed to automatically oversight. But then, due to our cultural setup, once you are elected into parliament, automatically you would want to align yourself to the party that took you to parliament. Yet a party, yes, a party should be having its own ideals in functional democracies like the US, where a party is known to stand for ABCD. But then in Kenya, a party is just a vehicle, is just an identity. Beyond a particular color code, there are no ideals, there is nothing that it stands for. So you align yourself automatically to the executive that is ruling. So then your function as the oversight element then fizzles out. That is how you're going to leave out the burden of oversighting the government to the other party members other than yourself. And most of the time, when you have an absolute majority, then they are going to be a minority that is oversighting the government, and it becomes so weak, then we don't have a strong oversight or opposition. So our cultural setup cannot allow us to have a functional opposition. Like Kisaka is saying, Baba has been known to be, for the longest in the history of Kenya, it is not written anywhere, but then he's been associated with the opposition until people were like, Baba works better when he's oversighting the government, not when he's in the executive. Yeah, but then, like you said, we need to relook our laws and get to legislate the office of the opposition. Thank
Philip,
you.
when you look at this thing of roping in numbers, today they just end up with a lot of baggage, because what will they do with all these numbers they're now trying to rope in around them, and they make it to form government? And then we start with the challenge of distribution of positions. Everybody wants a reward. This is not good for the country.
I mean, it's not good for the country, because that it means an ordinary person who was not in the inner circle of this politician
Will get left out.
Yeah, would get left out and would probably not be able to ascend to such positions, top positions like cabinet secretary positions, parliamentary PS positions, and principal secretary positions, and what have you. So it creates a sort of bias in terms of who is able to access those kinds of positions, positions in the boards, positions in parastatals as CEOs, and what have you.
So if they're not rewarded, they're the guys who make it they make to the hills, and start shouting and they want to liberate us again.
Of course, yeah, definitely. In the next election cycle, you have them switching sides and saying, look, I did this for you, you promised me this, you didn't deliver, and now I'm switching camps.
You had last-minute changes even in your area.
Pardon?
You had last-minute changes even where you went to vote.
Yeah.
Do those help?
They don't. The people are frustrated. That is why people form these kind of groups that it's a club. Look at how the nominations were done. Look at how the nomination list that came out the other day. The parties were just rewarding their party loyalists. Yet those positions are meant for the marginalized and those people in society that cannot competitively take part in these other processes of selecting leaders, like going for campaigns and going to be voted. They maybe lack funds, or they got some abilities that cannot enable them do that. But then the positions, when you looked at some of the names are associated with the big families, names associated with the serving leaders. So I bring in my cousin, I bring in my brother to come and fit there. So then it turns out to be an oligarchy. It is an extension of the ruling class, so to speak. So that is why these other positions are not competitively filled in. If it is the cabinet secretary, then we know it has to be someone who plays from our side. It has to be someone in our club. Then that is why Kenyans get so frustrated and maybe they don't take part in voting anymore.
You talked about this, Philip. That, like Dr. Hari is saying, that's then a big reason why people decide, I'm not going to vote.
Yeah, I mean, as he's said, we've seen this nomination list, and we are very surprised, and it sort of already shows you an indication of the boardroom decisions that have been made, that you have supported me to this extent, and my reward for you is I give you 2 nomination slots, choose people of your liking, which is not very good for democracy. However, again, as we know, our politics is very expensive in terms of campaigns, in terms of mobilization, and the only way to ascend even into power is to have people around you who are able to do this at a granular level, and then now you end up with only one maybe responsibility to them by now rewarding them, because I think most people don't do this out of the goodness of their heart. They do it because they expect something in return.
From a country which boasts of a lot of innovation, we adopt a lot of things which we say are innovative, and we have new ideas, and now we're talking about the portals and internet, yet we're very slow to understand what this means. When people, they say, look, I'm not going to vote, there's lack of choice. I don't want this candidate, but the person who's being given as an option, I don't want them either. This is a country that is growing. How do we end up in that position?
We end up in that position because, again, not very many youths, first of all, want to run for office. But secondly, because the nature of campaigns and running for office is that it is very expensive. So you find a situation where it is challenging for the person who would be the best suit for any position to run for this position simply because they cannot afford it. When they go maybe online or the social media to appeal for funding or what have you, then they are vilified. They are laughed at that you want to run for this office, you don't have money, when you get there you'll just eat. And so you're not getting the best or the creme de la creme running for such positions. You're just getting maybe an average or a below average person running for this position, but because of the fact that they have this money, they can mobilize, they can dish out handouts, then they end up winning these positions, notwithstanding the low voter turnout, because IEBC will not say that there was below 50% voter turnout, so you did not win. They will go as per the numbers of people who voted.
Some have suggested maybe we should put a cap on the campaign money. Can Kenya do that?
I mean, there's a law on that that had been passed, However, knowing Kenya, I know when the question during the gubernatorial debate was asked of the candidates, the running mate candidates, and they were asked, how much have you spent in your campaigns? And none could specifically say that I've spent this much. They retreated to saying that a friend gave me a chopper, a friend fueled my car, and a friend did this and all that. And they aggregated this to what their campaign was all about. No one was able to say that I withdrew 50 million from the bank or 100 million that I used for 1, 2, 3. So that just means that, of course, they're using huge budgets that they would not want to put in the public, because then it would beg the question, why are you using so much money for this? There must be an element of something that you know and we don't know.
And surprisingly, we are attracted to the one who's using even more money.
Correct.
Meanwhile, the incident where somebody was shot, and Dismas Baraza has actually been arrested. Maybe they took too long to do this, but they actually have arrested him, and let's see how that story develops. We'll keep you posted. And these are the kind of things we are trying to avoid in this election, and that was really an extreme action.
Yeah, so extreme. And in law, they call it the crime of passion, where you act out of excitement at the spur of the moment, that someone has disagreed with you or called you names, and then the next thing that you need to do is to pull your gun and want to kill them. We need to have very stringent laws on gun ownership. You've seen what guns have been doing in the US. The people who are handling these guns, in a way, are using them carelessly. It's not the first time that we have heard of a legislator or a leader pulling out a gun. We have heard of leaders pulling out guns at entertainment joints to harm people. It has been on record. So we expected that in these polls, given what we have gone through in the previous polls, the 2007, 2008, 2013, and 2017, then cases of aggression would be minimized, because given that the turnout was quite low, but then the voting was peaceful. We didn't have people shouting down others. We didn't have chaotic scenes that have been reported yet. But this that has come from Kimilili, from a leader that is wanting to be elected. So it's quite shameful, especially when it comes from a leader, and it should be castigated, and it shouldn't happen, and the full force of law should take effect.
This is part of the hype we're talking about, where people are pushed to the level where they talk about they're now desperate. And this money, as you said, money has been used. People have spent a lot of money, which they don't account for. And when people get desperate, these are the things that happen. How do we teach people different, especially the voter?
I mean, with the voter, again, this is something I think we'll keep on repeating on a civic education. But most importantly is seeing the progress we have made as a country. That an incident, first of all, I condemn this incident very much. It was very unfortunate that he had to do this. From the preliminary reports, of course, we've heard that it wasn't even much of a confrontation, and he just decided to do it. That is not yet confirmed. However, it was very interesting to see that there was no mobilization of supporters of the other candidates to now start rioting within the polling station or what have you. And it just shows the maturity level as a country where now, if politicians are fighting, we let them sort it within themselves. So again, it all goes down to, I have to win this elective position. I have taken loans, maybe I've made promises to 1, 2, 3, and I have to win it. It is make it or make it.
I want us to talk about those two things, that drawing money and then drawing promises and having people now all waiting for you to deliver, and that brings desperation. Let's take a look at what some of the leaders are saying who've been at it for some time now, and this is a whole new ballgame. Let's see what they have to say.
The information I have, there are already 2 voters in one polling station here in this ward. some elderly voters, 2 of them, who have found their votes in Kisumu. One in Kisumu and another one in another place. So they won't vote. They won't vote. So that means if they were voting for somebody, somebody could lose because those people didn't vote. So that's why we are saying IMBC has to improve on the way it manages elections. And this time it has had a lot of challenges. This time, many challenges. I am sure you know them. I don't want to explain that to you. And you can imagine the people of Kakamega who have to wait for another time to vote for their governor, and the people of Mombasa, how it will also affect other positions. Because there are people who specifically would want to come and vote for the governor. Some of them may say, I'm not coming because my governor is not on the ballot. Very unfortunate.
This is extremely swift this time round, and I would say it's free of any system failures. You say that it's a smooth process. Even in terms of marking of ballot papers, they're very clear. The colors are very well. The labeling is okay. So, well, I think they've conducted a good election. It was a decision that they made that they need change. So I'm certain that we're going to win. But if anybody is trying to woo voters so that a win can be presided on in their favor, then there's always ways and means of ensuring that that is cancelled.
So as they're falling, now they start grumbling, and now IEBC starts to come into center focus. Let's go to Narok.
There's a lot of concern. Yesterday, I actually commended IEBC for believing that they'll do a good job. And then when the counting started yesterday, crookedness was exposed. One of the stations that was affected was Ndura Yaburi, where I got more than 400 votes, and my opponent Kondutu got less than 50. And the person in charge there, the PO, actually swapped the results and gave Ndutu my results and gave me Ndutu's results. Today, another clerk and PO arrested in North East. The same person swapped my 478 votes with Ndutu's 76 votes. They admitted that they did it, but it was a mistake. But of course, it was calculated.
I know this is where we should have begun. This is what we want to know. Who has won? Are there names you recognize? Who was in competition? And actually, who did you vote for? Let's see how that is unfolding. we'll go back to those numbers and names, but Dr. you talked about schools, and actually let's find out more about the schools reopening. They've been on break, the children have been home. Where they're going to go back? Let's see what Magoha has to say.
Students will have to stay a little longer at home following the directive of Education Cabinet Secretary George Magoha stating that schools will reopen on August 15th instead of August 11th. This move has disrupted the school calendar by delaying it by 2 weeks since the second term of the school calendar, which started on 11th July, was expected to end on 16th September. The third term, scheduled to start on 26th September, was expected to end on 25th November. Wairimo Wasike, Look Up TV.
Numbers keep coming in. We also look at what is happening, especially in the city now. A lot of you traveled, maybe not so many of you, but the city has been deserted. Let's find out why.
Yesterday, Kenyans did come out in numbers to perform their civic duties, and it is back to business as usual. We are currently at the Cancom bus station. The place is usually a beehive of activities with businesses open and people boarding the bus to go to several parts of town. But as of today, the number of businesses open are very less, and also the number of people boarding the buses is not as high as it usually is. We are currently hoping that as the day goes by, the Kenyans are going to go back to opening their businesses, and it is going to be business as usual. But as you can see, very less people, even the number of cars passing on the roads are less.
Lakini kulingana jana na leo iko chini kusinda jana. Leo unaona watu wako na wasiwasi, sio kama jana walikuwa na moral kidogo, walikuwa na movement ilikuwa, lakini leo iko chini kabisa, watu wako na wasiwasi. Leo itakuwa chini juu according to result, italingana vile result inaendelea kutoka.
Na sasa neno moja kwa Wakenya,
Mimi nitawaambia wakoe tu na amani, tuongoje matokeo, tukubali, alafu kila mtu arudi kasi yake.
As you've heard, those were just a few words from one of the business people right here in Nairobi town, hoping and asking Kenyans to remain peaceful, and actually hoping that many people are going to come to town, many people are actually going to open their businesses. But as you've heard from him, he is not as hopeful. People are fearful of what is going to happen today, but they are remaining hopeful that the situation is going to be peaceful. There's not going to be much tension going around. So that is it right here from Nairobi CBD. We're going to keep on informing you of what is going on around town, but that is it from now. Bellamy Boston for Look Up TV in Nairobi.
Right, we'll keep checking on that situation. We'll keep checking the numbers. Everything is about Bomas. But so far, gentlemen, what have you picked up from the results that are coming in, the names you've heard? What have you picked up, Dr.
I've seen quite some new names. I have seen in my home county, Nyamira, there is a change of guard. I can see Honorable Walter Nyambati.
So you've also been surprised?
Yes, I've been surprised. He's a UDA, was a UDA candidate. And then I've seen Ronald Karauri. Ronald Karauli is an independent candidate for Kasarani. And you remember Ronald Karauri is the CEO SportsPesa. So he has also pulled a surprise in Kasarani and trounced the politicians because he was in the corporate world. Among the top losers, I've seen Kabogo of Kiambu. I have seen Moses Kuria. I've seen Ngirichi of Kirinyaga among the the big losers. We've seen Omatangi in Kiambu having transited from Senate to now gubernatorial is the governor-elect, among other notable names. I believe that a few more are going to be getting the surprises. Maybe Kenyans, let's brace for more surprises because...
Philip, you surprised?
She's not confirmed, but I also think from my home village.
You also surprised?
Yeah, the constituency, Likuyani constituency.
And you went there and came back to Nairobi and left. Why did you come back so quickly?
No, I mean...
you should have waited a bit. Maybe you would not be surprised.
Yeah, I think the incumbent, Mr. Enoch Kibunguchi, has been there for a while. And I'm not yet confirmed, but I hear from the ground that he may be losing for the first time in a very long time. So as the results keep trickling in, of course, we'll have losers, winners, new names that are coming in. I know is it from Bomet, the youngest, I think, women representative. Her name is they call her Toto.
Toto, yeah.
Yeah. So it would be very interesting to see the next set of leaders we'll be having.
So at some point, Kenyans is actually responding to what it is they want to see in terms of leadership. At some level, they're responding.
Yes. Yeah, to a certain extent, there is a response. And I want to hope that the surprise faces that we're seeing into these elective posts are aware that that is the making of the Kenyans. Let them not think that it's the making of their pockets, the making of their monies. It is the making of the Kenyans. Kenyans are tired. Kenyans are frustrated. Kenyans have almost lost hope. And that is why I think they are changing the leaders. We saw the Jubilee chairman got a surprise. Is it Jeremiah Kioni?
I'm not too sure.
Yeah, got a surprise quite... as the tallying is taking effect, I think by some time tomorrow, let's say 10 o'clock tomorrow, we would have had people shedding tears, others smiling and jumping up and down because they have made it to government.
As election should be, actually.
Yeah, as election should be.
Not everybody is going to win.
Correct.
Yeah, sure.
Why is it taken so adversely?
Again, the element of how much money, energy, effort you've put in, it sort of drains you. So by the time you're getting to the ballot, the ground has lied to you. There's this joke that has been doing rounds, I think, today and part of yesterday evening, that now Waheshimiwas are not picking calls, especially the ones that have lost. And they're complaining that you told me that the ground was with me, that I would have a resounding victory. But even in the polling station that you voted in, I only had 1 or 2 votes. And so I feel like most people put their all and they just want to make it so much so that when they are disappointed, then it becomes an issue that affects them emotionally, mentally, and that has already affected them financially.
I have no pity for those. If their intention was not good and if their motive was not good, then let them go home. Why do you need them?
Politics is lucrative. It is a multi-billion-dollar enterprise.
But we are starting to catch up with them. What is that we did with the CDF?
Yeah. We are starting to catch up, and I think it is believed that in politics that is where you can get rich quickly. That is where I teach at a university and I get peanuts. I mean, if I became an MCA today, then you'll see the difference in me.
Are you making an announcement here?
I'm not.
Just to be clear, I mean, Philip, maybe we need to change our polling station.
I've always wanted to be a lecturer. Now
I'm using myself as a teaching guide.
As a teaching guide. I need to be ready.
Cautiously, you should be treading carefully because if you want to join the profession, then if you're joining it for the money, then there is a root shock. Some of us do it because we would want to change society. I mean, it's a calling, it's a vocation.
Oh, Philip, you're not joining?
Yeah, I mean, probably in future, I would. My mom is a teacher. Probably she's watching, and she's always known that.
Make sure you make enough money out there before you join this profession. So then...
You're not doing this for your mama.
No, I'm actually doing it for me.
But you're being told it's not lucrative. Go into politics, like he's suggesting you might go.
Just the satisfaction of making an impact, teaching and all that, ultimately. But as you said, let's try and make this money before.
Go on, Dr.
Yeah. So then, if it is a multi-million-dollar enterprise, that is why people are taking it as a matter of life and death. That is why people are willing to kill. That is why people are willing to die, because the huge sums of money, the huge budget that they are spending on this in hunting for votes, the first thing that they do once they get to office is to recoup, is to get back their expenditure. That is why then they cannot go out there to think on behalf of Kenyans, to serve them, to work for them. But then they are getting there to get rich quickly because the future is uncertain. You're not so sure whether you're going to get in the second time. I come from a constituency that historically is known not to recycle leaders. No one leader has gone back, has been re-elected.
They've maintained that?
Yes, we have. That is the constituency that used to be represented by the late Honorable George Anyona Moseti, Kitutu East. It's now Kitutu Masaba. There is a surprise new entrant as we speak. There is a young man who is now the MP-elect, having trounced the incumbent who served for one term. So then that is why people, but then now people get to know that because that is a job that we give you. So once we give you that job, make sure that you do what you're supposed to do. That is when we can get you back into office again.
That's a warning for you. You're suggesting you're going to go do that. Now you can see what your own people do.
Yes.
Is one a lecturer?
I mean, when you say a warning, I remember the song, it's a dancehall song, or is it reggae song that says, this is a warning for the evil on the streets. So I think this is a warning for all those politicians who anticipate to just get into office and get rich quickly. We talked about the CDF yesterday and it being removed as within direct reach or control of the members of parliament. And we were asking the question that now that this is no longer there at their disposal, then what happens? I've seen a number of people joke online and say that the high number of concessions, people conceding we're receiving through either social media or through mainstream media, is because they already understand that, look, CDF is out, so what am I even going to do in there? Am I going to petition and spend money on petitioning and then again probably lose? Am I going to use more money, you know? So making these positions less lucrative in terms of accessibility to public funds, again, really goes a long way to help. Now, it makes them focus on the job because, as I said yesterday, they'll only be left with what they did during their tenure as a scorecard for them to be re-elected.
We talked about also the size, and we've also mentioned it. When you look at that ballot paper and there's 6 people to be voted for, do we have too much representation in your opinion? Do we really need all this representation?
Absolutely. We have a lot of representation. We have overlapping of positions and responsibilities and roles. It is not very clearly defined what a woman representative or a county member of parliament is supposed to do as opposed to the now elected member of parliament from different constituencies or sub-counties. And I think the makers of our constitution rushed it because they thought they were under pressure to fill in the positions for, let's say, women representation. Then they looked at the nomination slots that are meant for the marginalized and the youth and the like. But then now we have a bloated structure that is not so effective. Because if you ask what the office of the senator does, that is different from the office of the member of county assembly, for for example, if it is oversight, then it is not so clear. Such that once you want to assign the roles to each of them, and it also goes a long way to have adequate civic education. Once again, let the people know that if there is a particular class of road that is in a village somewhere, this belongs to the MCA. This belongs to the member of the National Assembly. This belongs to the central government. The majority of the voters or the Kenyans don't know that because they have not been told this office looks, let's say, for example, the woman representative, that they take care of the affirmative action. There are this number of funds to it, and then it should be having these structures, and this is what they should be doing so that you can hold them accountable. That is why it is easier for them once they are elected. They get to Nairobi, they buy the homes in Nairobi and the big cars, and they are working there, and nobody's bothering them. Maybe until the next cycle.
If we should even have them in the first place.
Yes.
But right now, let's go back to Henry Tende, who's at the Bomas of Kenya, where all the action is. Let's see what he has for us.
Welcome at Bomas of Kenya, where on standby we have Mr. Korir, the outgoing Lang'ata MP, to speak to us about the feeling and what he makes of this exercise. Mr. Korir, please welcome.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for joining us. What is your immediate reaction to the results today?
I'm okay. As you're aware, I have conceded defeat to my competitor. After looking at the results from the tallying center that I did myself, because I got all the forms from all my agents, and having done my calculation, my competitor was ahead of me by a few votes. And I said it's honorable as a Democrat to concede defeat, because that is a decision of the people of Lang'ata, and I move forward to other things. Yes.
It's not so easy, it's not so often that a sitting member of parliament will concede defeat honorably and tell his competitor, congratulations, you can go ahead and offer the services to the citizens of Lang'ata. How did you come to this decision?
For your information,
yes,
I vied in 2013, and in 2013 I came second to Honorable Joshua. Under the tallying center, I shook his hand, and I told him I told him congratulations then. In 2017 I vied, I won. Unfortunately, the person I was competing with did not shake my hand.
Yes.
He took me to court, High Court and Court of Appeal.
Yes.
This time again, my competitor has won, and I've conceded defeat, and I said congratulations. I'm a Democrat, and looking at what happened in Lang'ata, I don't think there was any grave issue involving IBC and malpractices, so there is no need for dragging each other to court or trying to say that things were not done properly. So I move forward.
Yes.
So that is Nixon Korir for you.
Yeah, Nixon Korir for us.
Yeah.
What's your immediate plan? Are you planning to get in corporate, or what is your immediate plan?
No, I'll take a rest first. You know, it's not easy. Campaigning and also leadership takes a lot of responsibility. I have a young family. We will discuss with the family on what to do. But for now, I want to tell the people of Lang'ata that I'm really grateful for the opportunity they gave me. I'm still around. I'm still available for any support that they require from me. I will still be their member of parliament if anyone needs any support from me. Right now we are focusing on the presidential vote, and that's why we are here, to at least monitor the presidential vote and ensure our candidate William Ruto emerge successful.
Yes. And how are you performing currently?
Currently, from our tallying center, we are leading. We are winning.
Okay.
Yes, yes.
Yes, so you're confident?
We are confident, yes. Yes.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
That is Mr. Nixon Korir, the outgoing Langata Member of Parliament, talking to us. And in his defeat, he has remained modest. He says congratulations to his main competitor, Jalango. And he says he is still the Member of Parliament. The people of Langata voted in. He will be available in case they need any direction in matters leadership, and he will afford Mr. Jalango all the necessary support as he leads the people of Langata. That is it from me. We will keep tabs and we will keep the interviews coming your way, so keep tabs on Lookup TV.
Well, we can only hope that there'll be a lot more of that, people conceding peacefully, accepting the results. And even as we close our discussion now, Dr. Ari, what is the one thing you need to tell Kenyans at this point, with all this anxiety and a bit of information lag and people want to get back to normal, but what do you have to tell them?
Patience. Patience, we got to be patient. We have done politicking for a long time. We committed to vote for our leaders. We went and voted for the leaders. And the tallying process is not so easy, because when the results come from the polling station, it goes to the constituency, and then from the constituency, especially for the presidential, then it goes to the national returning officer. It is a tedious exercise, and it's an exercise that is so sensitive that needs to be done carefully. We have a history. We have a history of rushed tallying and rushed declarations. So this time around, I think IEBC is committed to make sure that the exercise is fair, it is free, it is verifiable, and it is credible. And that is what we're expecting. Therefore, let's be patient and let's put hope in the process. Those that are conceding, let them do it honorably. Those that are winning, let them also celebrate honorably. We are one Kenya. It is not us against them. We are one Kenya, whether we are associated to the part, or rather the formation that is going to win, or the one that is not going to win. After the declaration and the swearing in of the leader, we will have a Kenya. I'll go back to class and teach my students without necessarily minding where they voted or whom they voted. Therefore, let's maintain peace. Let's not have tension that is unnecessary. And those of us that are sharing information across the media, especially the social media, please share information that has been verified and confirmed, especially from the IEBC, so that we can help people maintain their peace. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dr. Ogato. Orina, observe now that you have a surprise in your own home. Yeah. We'll keep talking to you. Yeah. Philip, what would you say at this point?
I think I share the same sentiments with Dr. Ari, that the very first thing is for us to keep calm. There's a reason why the laws say that there's a 7-day period for announcement of these results, because it also anticipates any unforeseen events, any unforeseen delays. And so let's be patient, let's be calm, let us, I think I'm very optimistic with how IEBC has run things. So far, I'm yet to get to a point where I'm doubting the ability to deliver a credible election. So again, let us just be calm, let us maintain peace. We are one people, we are one Kenya.
Good. So we're saying if there's no reason, let's start jumping down at IEBC, let them do their job.
Yes.
Unless we find reason. So you voted, now allow IEBC to do their job. The results will come out and you will know if your vote counted. And at Lookup TV, we are going to give you these results. We'll give you the names, accurate names of those who are winning and those who are losing. And you will then understand what it means to be a voter in 2022. Have a good night.